Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys about why extremist exclusionary diets like vegan diets and ketogenic diets really have no place in the fitness world. And I know this is going to ruffle some feathers, but I'm going to call it like I see it. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And a lot of this comes from the fact that all of these extremist type diets have people completely avoid multiple food groups that have health benefits and help contribute to a balanced diet, and in some cases consume extreme amounts of things beyond their healthy limits. Because what people need to remember when we're talking about foods, the poison is in the dose. And there are plenty of foods that have extreme health benefits, even when eaten in large amounts, that if eaten in excess can cause problems. But that's true of most foods, meaning there's a healthy intake of any sort of food or food ingredient. Meaning if you stay in that healthy range, you're going to have health benefits. If you go too low in some of those things, you're going to suffer health problems. And if you have too much, you're going to suffer health problems. And essentially, both of these types of diets are based upon orthorexic concepts. And orthorexia nervosa is now considered to be an eating disorder, which is an eating disorder in which people legitimately believe there are good and bad foods, and there are foods that are normally occurring foods, not necessarily something we've completely fabricated in a lab, like a lot of trans fats and things like that, which do tend to be unhealthy even in small amounts, but that we are literally classifying foods as good and bad to the point of placing moral value on them, to the point where people are afraid of or revolted by or refuse to eat even a drop of certain types of otherwise healthy foods. All right, that is an actual eating disorder. So the reason we would say that is that you have these two diets are two of the most extreme diets. There are other food avoidance diets, but these two diets are the most extreme. And they're quite frankly unhealthy. And a lot of people say, how could you say that? My diet is so healthy. And you'll see people who say, there are doctors on both sides who say that ketogenic diets are perfectly healthy, or that vegan diets are perfectly healthy. But the reality is, those are complete contradictions, because these diets are the complete opposite of each other. Basically, ketogenic diets are literally all animal products, or in some cases, at least 80% animal products. Animals and animal byproduct is what you're eating for anywhere from 80 to 100% of your calories. In a true ketogenic diet, it actually is over 90%. Where a vegan diet is 100% plant-based. The complete avoidance of all animal products. The problem with this idea is that, again, they're classifying these foods, certain foods, as good and bad. Right off the top of the bat, we need to realize saturated fat's a perfect example of a food that has a safe intake. And arguably, small amounts of saturated fat can actually have health benefits and cardioprotective benefits. Their neurological damage benefits, even helping stave off things like Alzheimer's in a certain threshold of intake. If you eat too much of it, it's bad for you and it can kill you. And if you eat too little of it, you can lose those protective benefits. Generally, you're going to see vegans will scream that all saturated fat is bad because large amounts of saturated fat kill you, which is true. That's absolutely true. So therefore, they say you should avoid all of it, and you'll avoid all animal products to do this. That's part of their contention. Whereas, and you'll see ketogenic dieters have the opposite, even more insane approach. I will actually say on this one, the ketogenic diet is more insane, because they'll tell you, no, saturated fat is perfectly fine. See, it's even healthy, yeah, in small amounts. But when you start exceeding 30 grams a day of it chronically, we know it elevates LDL cholesterol. 90% of people who follow ketogenic diets have elevated LDL cholesterol, and they're in such denial about it that they refuse to look at the newest current evidence, which says atherosclerosis, and I always say that wrong, just hardening of the arteries, which will eventually cause a heart attack, is directly caused by elevated LDL. It's not correlated. There's now considered to be causation in the cardiac world and cardiologist world. It's actually known now to be the actual cause. So even though you might lose some short-term risk factors towards heart disease on a keto diet, you will cause long-term buildup of plaque and hardening of the arteries from this that will eventually give you a heart attack. It's just going to reduce other risk factors up until it happens. It's a diet that essentially, if you're genetically predisposed towards heart attacks, this diet will give you a heart attack 20 years down the road. Absolutely will do it. That's the problem. But, you know, the issue is because they're both extreme and ignoring that there's actually a safe and healthy intake of saturated fat, and instead taking the extreme that it's either totally healthy to consume in excess or that it's terrible for you even in trace amounts. Again, this is not healthy. This is not a healthy mindset. This is not a healthy idea. And, you know, vegans take it a step further with other stuff, and they'll claim, oh, you know, animal proteins cause all these health problems. They're evil. They cause cancers, everything else. Yet the scientific data doesn't support this. Vegans base this up on Dr. Campbell, who is considered to be a quack. You have one doctor who came up with this hypothesis over 50 years ago, was involved in the China study and everything else, very biased and believes this, but when it's been studied in labs, it doesn't seem to be true. Animal protein actually seems to be protective of a lot of things, particularly even dairy protein. Actually consuming it in moderation, which means you're still taking in animal protein, seem to be cardioprotective. It actually is protective against osteoporosis a little bit. Again, vegans will claim it destroys your bones and it leaches calcium out of your bones. The reality is it actually seems to help with certain forms of osteoporosis and osteoarthritis. Animal proteins in a certain intake seem to be protective against certain types of cancers. The only thing is, if you suffer from kidney problems, if you have kidney problems, any sort of kidney disease, it's considered that really high intakes of animal protein are going to be bad for you. But barring something like that, it doesn't seem to be a problem. And in fact, the more animal protein that people eat as a composition of their diet, the leaner they tend to be. And being leaner reduces a lot of risk factors. So again, you've got this insanity over here on the vegan end, and then you have ketogenic dieters who will say that grains are evil and all these carbs are evil. You know the reality? Eating whole grains is more protective against diabetes than a ketogenic diet is. What? Study after study after study shows that grains, particularly whole grains, reduce your chances of developing diabetes, and they give you better blood sugar control. Yet all these vegans, or not vegans, but ketogenic dieters will stand there and say, oh, grains are bad, they're evil. Well, actually, if you don't eat grains, you're more likely to develop certain diseases than someone who eats grains. In fact, people who eat most of their calories from grains or fruit in their diets tend to have lower rates of heart disease, lower rates of cancer, lower rates of diabetes than people who don't. And they have lower rates of obesity. Because again, you have better blood sugar control, better appetite control that affects everything from the way the body handles insulin up into how many calories you overeat. So we have these crazy diets that are food avoidance diets, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of other food groups we could include in here, that these diets pretend like they're unhealthy for you, they're terrible for you. They completely avoid entire healthy food groups, and then people try to pass these off as the way and the truth. And what people need to remember is that there are extremists on both sides who claim that both of these absolutely opposite incompatible diets are extremely healthy, the healthiest diets known to man, but the reality is a balanced omnivorous diet that includes lean proteins, that includes low-fat dairy, that includes fruits, grains, all of these things. People who eat balanced diets and minimally processed foods actually tend to have the best health markers. They tend to have better health markers, live longer, be leaner, be healthier, and be more athletic than people in either of these extremist diets are. The take-home message here is that balanced diets based upon whole foods in which you don't eat any one thing in excess, but you don't avoid any healthy food group, actually is the healthiest way to eat for longevity, health, and athleticism. Balanced, nutritious, whole food diets that don't exclude any food group. but that minimize the amount of junk food, fried food, refined sugar, things, and even saturated fat that you take in. That's actually the key to a healthy diet, is balance, not either of these two extreme unbalanced approaches. And again, these are both examples of diets that are based upon orthorexic tendencies, and you see large amounts of eating disorders within both of these groups. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.